As we sit and wait for a possible Brandon Aiyuk trade, there is another possibility that maybe we haven't considered enough. What if he's actually healthier than we think? There's a rumor out there that may provide some good news. Plus, weird things are happening with the 49ers Media Madness tournament and a tweet from a 49ers beat writer that's literally going to cause the vein in my forehead to flat out explode. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the original Gold Standard podcast and the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Levin Black. It is Wednesday, Levin. Glad you're back from the wholesale shopping experience. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, we're only like 45 minutes later than planned because somebody decided to go to Costco this morning and it did not go as planned.
What happened while you were there?
Wasn't so much while I was there. It was, I was woken up late. So we were getting a little later of a start than we planned. And then the kid was not wanting to get dressed because she was playing pretend and didn't want to stop. And by the time we got out the door, okay, now we're already running late. And then Costco is Costco lately. We haven't gone in a month and a half, but Costco has been crazy busier than normal.
I just want to point out that Levin tried to shirk all responsibility by saying I was woken up late as if he doesn't have an alarm on his phone. That's neither here nor there. Plenty of stuff to get to on today's show. There's a Brandon Aiyuk rumor that I think we should take with a major grain of salt, but if it is true, would be very good news for the Niners. Weirdness happening in the Media Madness tournament that has never happened before that Levin has investigated for me, so we'll get into that. And David Lombardi has a tweet that literally is going to make my head explode.
But before any of that, the super important thing. Vinny V asks, Levin, are you a hot dog and soda from Costco kind of guy? No, I am the pepperoni pizza that's literally dripping in grease. Not kidding. It was dripping in grease this time. And I get the espresso frappe, whatever you want to call it. I call them ices.
Of course you do. I would, yeah, that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get into the Brandon Aiyuk stuff because I continue to think he's going to be traded before April 1st simply because Jed York doesn't want to pay his $23 million option bonus that's due on April 1st. And that also guarantees his 2026 option bonus due on April 1st. That's like $25 million. But I did see this tweet yesterday, and it comes from 49ers and NFL News 24/7, who says, while the Niners won't rush Brandon Aiyuk back, there is optimism that the wide receiver will be ready for week 1 of the 2025 season per source. Quote, he's been rehabbing like a champ and plans to be ready. Now, I want to acknowledge that is exactly the type of thing the 49ers would want to leak when they are trying to trade Brandon Aiyuk. So clearly you have to take this with a huge grain of salt, Levin. But if he can come back in week 1 or, the first quarter of the season, that would be a huge, huge boost to the 49ers.
Well, I'm glad you took away one of my wet blanket angles of, well, of course, this is just the team trying to have positive vibes out there as they look to trade him so that I don't have to do that. The other poo-pooing is, who cares? The team hasn't made a single move this offseason. If you think this is a contending team, you're sorely mistaken. Can they make the playoffs? Yeah, there's the possibility that if everything breaks right, they can make the playoffs. Like I told you on the phone, I think it was yesterday, they're kind of in the inverse. They missed the playoffs the past year because everything broke poorly for them. If Purdy is the real deal, if Aiyuk returns, if they have no injuries, they can be a playoff team, but they're not a contending team. So whether or not Brandon Aiyuk is back week 1, I don't honestly care. As long as he comes back healthy and isn't rushed back, that's all I care about.
What if they get in the middle, right? Everything broke bad last year. Let's assume everything is not going to break perfectly this year. What if they get half the breaks this year? I think that puts them in the playoffs.
I think that makes them in that 7 to 10 range. Maybe with some good luck, they can get to 10 wins and make the playoffs, but I think that would put them in the realm of purgatory where exactly you don't want to be. That's the problem I have with the offseason. If you're going to tear it down, tear it down. If you're going to try to contend, try to contend. Don't play the middle game. That is the worst spot to be because you don't get a high enough draft pick to get a difference maker unless you're really lucky, and you're not good enough to actually contend. So what's the point?
I say with this team, and I think the NFL playoffs have shown, you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Anything. I saw this team go into Lambeau Field against Aaron Rodgers and win a game without scoring an offensive touchdown, man. In 2021, that happened. Like, I'm saying, just get in. It's a different, we have to adjust our thinking and our sort of expectations when we're considering this team. Just get into the playoffs and anything can happen. It's not, hey, we're the big bad Niners. We're the bully. We're going to, kick your ass and laugh at you and destroy you by multiple scores. That's not who they are anymore. But that doesn't mean that they can't win. It just means it's going to be a lot scarier game to game.
I don't think that that's actually true in this era of the NFL. Yeah, could you win a Super Bowl with a garbage quarterback in the past and having one side of the ball being completely terrible? Yeah, that's true. In the Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and even Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen era, you're not getting through whatever AFC team is in that Super Bowl with one side of the ball being mediocre. That's the problem. You're in a special era of quarterbacks. I think you're in an era of quarterbacks that was like the late 80s to early 90s. You have Hall of Fame quarterbacks that can't get a Super Bowl.
Everything that you're saying is logical, but it's not 100%. The Chiefs beat the 49ers with a very mid offense. Now, they had a great defense, but their offense was very mid. They just happened to have Patrick Mahomes, who did the damn
Exactly. They're not mid when it counted. That's the difference. When it counted, Patrick Mahomes would become Patrick Mahomes.
Right, but I don't think that Brock Purdy is so bad that he can't have one of those drives when it counts. I know he hasn't. He didn't in the Super Bowl, but
it's not the Brock Purdy side of the ball that I'm worried about.
Well, I get that. And that goes back to what do they do in the draft and how good are those players? And I have sort of a rookie theory that I want to lay on you later. I had a little time today, so I put together a nice little presentation for you that I'm sure you're going to poo-poo relentlessly, but we'll get to that. But I think that people, because of all the stuff that has happened this offseason, and the Niners saying over and over again how much they hate the Brandon Aiyuk contract and how terrible it is and how they want to get out of it so bad, I think that people are forgetting how good Brandon Aiyuk is. Over the last 3 years, he has 50 receptions of 20 yards or more. 50. That is 10th in the NFL, and that is second only to George Kittle among 49ers players. So even more than Debo, including prime Debo, Brandon Aiyuk has more explosive receptions on this team. And I think because of the crap that they've been shoveling on him this offseason and the slow start he got off to last year, Levin, I think people forget how good he is and what he means to this offense.
I think a lot of the perception of Brandon Aiyuk right now is the 49ers' fault. They haven't had his back. Let's be honest.
Yep.
They are basically putting Brandon Aiyuk out there. They're hanging him out. I wouldn't say necessarily to dry, but he's on the line right now outside drying. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we didn't want to sign you, but we signed you. We didn't really want to keep you. Oh, but now you got injured. So now we really don't want to keep you. But hey, we also don't really want to trade you because the contract makes it prohibitive. And it's just when the team is half in on somebody and they're highly paid and they got hurt, the fans are going to turn on that person.
But I don't think he's that highly paid, especially now with some of the receiver contracts that have just come out. I think his contract is fine for his production. I really do think that. And I don't think it's that terrible. I know Jed doesn't like it, but I don't look at Brandon Aiyuk as one of the most overpaid wide receivers in the league.
Yeah, but don't you think the perception would be different if you had John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan talking about Brandon Aiyuk going, we really need him. He's a great player. Once he gets healthy, you know, we got no qualms. We think we have a true number one guy. The perception would be different. It's the fact that the team is not having his back and not coming out here singing his praises that gives everybody else kind of puts everybody else in the mindset from the start of questioning that guy.
Or at the very least, and it's a good point that you bring up, we didn't even see anybody from the team respond to any of the articles that came out of them crapping on Aiyuk, right? Nobody came out and said, hey, we love Brandon Aiyuk. he's a great part of our offense and blah, blah, blah. They didn't even refute any of that stuff that came out. So it's like,
I think they're saving it because they know they're going to have to do it for Purdy.
jeez.
You know what I mean? Kittle doesn't want to come out and have Brandon Aiyuk's back and go after the media and all that, because here in another month, he's going to have to be doing the press tour saying, no, we need the guy. Purdy, the Niners should, and trying to get Purdy paid.
You don't even need to attack the media. You could just say, hey, we love Brandon Aiyuk. The contract negotiation was tough, but we were thrilled to have him back. Obviously, we like him because we could have traded him and we stopped it from happening. Nope. None of that. From utter silence from the 49ers. That just seems to confirm that they believe these things that are out there. And I think it has contributed to just such a distortion of what Brandon Aiyuk is as a player. And I hope that he can come back. And if he is anywhere close to ready, week 3, week 4, something like that, it would be a tremendous boost to this offense, to the point where, yeah, you might have to score 30, 35 points a game to win them because the defense is not looking at their best right now. But you could conceivably do that. That's not on the super high end of projections for the 49ers offense, considering they still have CMC and Kittle and Juwan Jennings, and hopefully a better version of Ricky Pearsall. I don't think that that's that crazy of a projection for them.
No, you could make the argument, and I would be one that probably leans that way, that the offense is better by subtraction going into next season, because Aaron Banks is not a big enough loss. Whatever they do to address that, whether it's draft or otherwise, is going to be as good or very, very close, with the potential of being better. What if they get, another Pooney? Obviously, it's a big upgrade all of a sudden. Whatever they do, if they address center, Brindle, it's got to be an upgrade, because Brindle's the worst center in the entire league that starts. And then Debo, that's the big one. I think that you can argue it's addition by subtraction, because Brandon Aiyuk, force feeding him the ball, hampered and held back this offense in a big way. I think it held back Kyle Shanahan's play calling, and I think it also held back the team in general, because I think it was a crutch of, we're struggling, let's just dump it to Debo and hope he can do something. Now the mindset's going to be, we're struggling, we need to figure it out.
Yeah, forcing the ball to Debo definitely ground this offense to a halt at times, because he just flat out couldn't get it done. And that obviously will not be there. We will not have that to complain about this season. There may be other things. We are fully willing to admit that, but at least that one thing. And that does kind of just provide a little relief, right? Because that was some of the frustration. Well, it was we're doing the same thing over and over again, and it's not working, and we haven't learned the lesson. Well, they literally can't do it this year. Even if they wanted to, they're forced to change that one thing.
Yeah, it is. I'm excited to see, does the offense finally evolve? Because that's how I felt the last few years, is you're still running 2019. The offense in the NFL evolves way too quickly. I would say it's a 2-year cycle. If you're running the exact same thing you were running 2 years prior, you're now outdated. And the Niners have been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah, you and I disagree on this point. I still think that, I don't think you have to come up with all new plays every 5 years.
I'm not saying all new plays, but you got to evolve. And I don't think the 49ers offense evolved at all. They were doing identical style of offense. Let's try to run Debo. Let's try to dump it off to Debo. Oh, let's throw the intermediate route finally over the middle. Let's try to leak out Kittle. Let's try to leak out Juice.
They were 4th in the NFL in passing yards per game last year. I think it was fine where they struggled.
Just because they were doing good doesn't mean they couldn't do better. That is a fallacy. They have as much talent on offense, even right now, as any team in the league.
I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, if all their plays were so old and they were all figured out by the NFL, they wouldn't be able to be 4th in the league in passing yardage, because the defenses would have caught on to what they were doing, is my point. Now,
they're more talented.
They could certainly be better. They could certainly get better in the red zone. That was the big frustrating thing for them. If you look at the teams ahead of them in passing yards, it was the Ravens, Lions, and Bucks. They all score at least 29 points per game. Unfortunately, the Niners were down at 23. Why? Because their field goal kicker couldn't make a damn kick, and they could not get the damn ball in the red zone. That is something. And that is really That's where Kyle liked to go to Debo the most. He liked to do the screens or the end arounds to get the ball in Debo's hands right around that like 20, 25 yard range. That was sort of his like get out of jail free card because Kyle's offenses have consistently been at their worst in the red zone. It was only in 2021 where Debo just went absolutely berserk and he kind of bailed out the Niners in the red zone and made them a better red zone offense. What do they do in the red zone this year? What is their answer now that Debo isn't there? That's one thing I definitely want to see.
Get the physical mismatch. That's the thing that drives me nuts about, I think it is a Kyle Shanahan mindset. He wants to succeed by not letting the defense know what's coming. You know, you have Christian McCaffrey, dual threat. You have Debo Samuel, dual threat. Cover them both. Good luck, right? If you cover them both, guess what? Somebody else is wide open. That's the way he tries to succeed in the red zone. Whereas most teams, when they succeed in the red zone, what do? Oh, we have this huge guy over here that, yeah, the defense knows it's coming, but he's bigger and stronger than them, so they can't do anything about it. And we're going to line up in a way that gets them single man coverage on the outside so that there's no help capable of being there fast enough. That's what they do. Shanahan will not. I think Shanahan mistake in the red zone is he doesn't believe enough in this guy's just a physical freak who's 6'5". Go to him, and the defense can't do anything to stop it. Look at Mike Evans. How many of his touchdowns have come just because it's a jump ball in the end zone from the red zone? Kyle Shanahan does not call those. He wants somebody to be wide open in the red zone in order to score. And I think that's the fallacy that he has, the problem I have with his red zone and why he's always had red zone issues. He doesn't believe in enough in, we have this George Kittle guy. Let's get him in motion, lined up to where we know he gets single coverage going to the corner of the end zone, and we'll throw him a jump ball. Let's get Juan Jennings the same thing, because those are the two tall physical freaks that are going to be able to outstrength somebody and at the very least make sure that the defense doesn't get the interception and has a 50-50 shot of getting the touchdowns themselves.
The thing that I like is Aiyuk's strength is getting open against man coverage. That's going to help in the red zone. He's going to get more red zone targets just by default because Debo isn't there. Obviously, I think that Kittle will pick up the slack in that area. You know, I don't think they use George Kittle enough. It's stunning to me how they have underutilized George Kittle. They need to use him even more than they already have. You know, it's funny, like we're in draft season now and, you know, everybody's doing pro days and stuff. There's pro days going on today and they're releasing the numbers for the tight ends and what they ran. And one of the tight ends, I can't remember who it was, ran like a 4.62, something like that. And that was like the second fastest tight end 40 time. And I'm just sitting there and I can't help it. It's me that needs to change, but I compare every tight end that runs to George Kittle. George Kittle ran a 4.52 at the combine. And he told Kyle, I think it was Kyle Posey last year, he still runs a 4.5. Like, yeah. Use this man. He is a physical freak. So please, we are begging you, Kyle Shanahan, more 85 in the red zone.
I would like more 85 everywhere. Yeah. Stop pretending he's a blocking tight end.
How many times do I say it, Levin? Blocking is the second best thing that George Kittle does. And until
I think whenever George Kittle retires or is no longer on the 49ers, that will be the one like good thing that comes out of it. I won't have to hear you say that anymore.
I would just like for it to be acknowledged and publicly utilized. But yeah, I do think that is something that hopefully will change this season. Hopefully we will see it. Isn't that why they signed Luke Harrell, right? Or Farrell? Luke Farrell. I don't know.
No, they signed Luke Farrell so that George Kittle can block all the time and Farrell can go out on routes.
Look, if that's what it takes, okay. But please just use 85 more. Now you got your backup tight end. He can do the blocking, whatever it takes. Let's go. Nick Ellert says, Rob, evolve every 2 years with your sayings. Bleep it out. But as long as they still apply, I don't need new sayings.
It's a good way to put it, but I have heard it plenty. But it was a good way of putting it when you created it. So there's no real improving that. It's still true. I do want to say, I saw a video talking about, it was Chad Ochocinco talking about how he came up with the change in his name and all that stuff. I say that because maybe we should launch a campaign saying, no, Chad, you need to change your name again because 85 is now owned by George Kittle. He's actually going to the Hall of Fame.
That's mean, but true. Mr. J is dunking on me. He says, let's trade Brock Purdy to the Giants, LOL. I had that take that it made sense to me that I could see the Giants trading for Brock Purdy because Brian Daboll is desperate to save his job. Well, I cut that out of the show. I put it on YouTube. 2 hours later, the Giants sign Russell Wilson in free agency and totally make me look like an idiot. Now, every comment on the video is, you're so dumb, this age like milk, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I said it before it happened, but that's, sometimes you get burned like that.
Is it better to be famous or infamous?
Yeah. Jerry Jones says there's no such thing as bad publicity, but that one bit me.
Spoken like a guy that has billions of dollars, so it doesn't really matter.
True. All right, Levin. People are asking in the chat, so let's talk about this now. The 49ers Media Madness Tournament, the third year of the tournament. Everybody knows by now it's just a way to expose people to different Niners content creators. We're in round 2 of the tournament, and we have discovered a fraud has been committed. There has been a fraud perpetrated on you, 49ers fans, and on the public. I looked at one of the matchups. There was a crazy, way more votes in one of the matchups than
we should have caught it in round 1, but honestly, we progressed with. I didn't look into it all that deep.
When I texted you about it, first of all, I did not realize I texted a bulldog. I texted Levin about this, and I was like, this seems fishy to me. And I knew that I was in for it when the response was, I will dig into it. And boy, did you dig into it, Levin. And what did you find?
Somebody cheated. Somebody has a bot. Now, I'm saying somebody because we can't truly prove who it is, but the bot benefited one person and one person only. So you can make your own assumptions on who would bother getting a bot to benefit one person who should have easily lost round 1, but ended up winning round 1 because we didn't catch it, and is currently demolishing their opponent in round 2. The reason why I say it's a bot is because the beautiful thing about Google Forms is they have a button that you can say export to Google Sheets right away so that you can immediately start drawing data from it. So I did that because what's happening is most matchups have around a little over 500 votes. There is one matchup out of 16 that is pushing over 3,500 votes, meaning there are about 3,000 votes out there that only voted for that one matchup. Now, 3,000 votes is a lot. So I went and looked, and I just quickly scanned through all 3,000 rows in Google Sheets to see. And I originally texted you saying, actually, I'm not sure that this is a bot, because just in the first glance, it was like 15 to 20 minute windows where a bunch of votes came in for the one person. I thought, well, somebody could do that. A human can do it for 15, 20 minutes, then get fatigued and say, I'm done. Right. And it was very, very uniformly 5 to 7 seconds, with about 90% of them being 6 seconds apart, meaning there was a vote that was made that only voted for this person. And 6 seconds later, another poll was made that was only for that person. And then another 6 seconds later. And that went on for like 15, 20 minutes. But then I started, okay, I'm going to count up how many times this went. So I went and found the windows, and I was going to calculate to see how long each one went. And the very first window was over 3 hours long. And it's like, okay, no human is capable of clicking. What you would have to do is you would have to use a drop-down menu, say cast vote for this person, hit submit, refresh your page, do the drop-down menu, select that person, hit vote, refresh your page. That could be done in 5 to 7 seconds by a human. But for 3 hours straight, and this is the key point, without a single break. If it was like, oh, they did it for half an hour, and then there was this 3-minute area where no vote came in, I could see that being a human because they're taking a break. There was no break. 3 hours straight of it. 3 hours and 6 seconds and 45 tenths to be exact, because Google takes it down to the hundredth of a second.
Right. So you're not peeing, you're not checking your phone, you're not getting distracted by something on the
internet. You're not having a blip in your internet, nothing. So somebody has a bot. And I'll say this, even better sign that it was a bot, the person learned to try to trick us better, because that first block had almost 1,000 votes for them in 3 hours. And then after that, it was the ones that I noticed when I was doing my quick scan. It was 15 to like 22-minute windows of about 200 to 300 votes. And then there was even at the end a segment where it was like 5 to 8 votes where it was just that person and no other matchups are voted in. And then there would be a matchup where every single matchup got voted in. And then another 5 to 6 where it was just that person. And then a matchup where all of the people, and as I'm scrolling through this, I'm like, boy, that looks very regimented, almost like a bot is doing it, as if they learned to set their bot to go, okay, do 5 or 6 just for me, and then do this one that includes everybody, because the ones that included everybody were the exact same 16 people selected every single time. And I'm talking about that full ballot happened 20 to 30 times amongst the 250 or so that happened, which means that would be an extremely, extremely low chance for 20 straight ballots to have the same exact 16 people selected.
And even if it wasn't a bot and someone literally did sit there for 3 hours and vote for someone else over and over again, that's not the spirit of the tournament. Okay. Like that just totally compromises the entire thing. The purpose of this thing is to get the reaction of the fans and the tone of the fans, and to see who they're liking in that current year and who's popular, and how that changes over time. So it just goes against the whole spirit of the tournament. So,
and like I said, I'm not going to personally say that it was definitely the person that benefited. It seems most likely, but it could have been somebody else decided that they have this bot and they're like, I'm going to have her win it, throw the thing in the hierarchy and just having fun, goofing off, destroying this thing, and purposely chose the person that was included for the very first time that probably had the longest odds of anybody in round 1, because she was going against Grant Cohn, who is, if I'm not mistaken, made the finals every year.
Well, it's the thing, you're not revealing who it was.
Well, I'm like I said, I have no problem. I told you in text, I have no problem saying who benefited. I'm just not willing to say that that person did it, because it very well could have been just a fan of hers saying, I have this bot that I can easily program to do this for her, and she has no clue that this is happening. So I'm not saying that she's to blame, but she definitely is the one that benefited.
Right. And it goes against the whole premise of the tournament. So now the question becomes, Levin, what do we do about this?
I throw all those votes out, because it's pretty easy to do, because like I said, it's in Excel. So I can easily say, okay, this is how many were, throw out any ballot that only voted for that one person. And if you do that, then you can get a somewhat accurate count. And when I did that, granted, this was yesterday about this time, so there's been more votes since. It was, if I remember correctly, it was like 352 to 46 or 61 or something like that. Like, it was extremely heavy that the other person was getting all the votes. And I didn't break it down quite as in depth in round 1, but in round 1, there were similar numbers. There's about 500 to 600 polls that had for everybody else. And then that matchup had like 3,000. And if you go and you discard those, Grant won easily in round 1. So Grant kind of is the one that got screwed in this, because we're not going to go all the way back and restart.
So that is probably what we're going to do. We're going to shut down voting for round 2. We'll get the voting up for round 3. Now, what I think we have to do, unfortunately, is only allow 1 vote per person now, to prevent something like this from happening in the future. And what that means is you're going to have to sign in if you want to vote.
Because that's the only way. The only way that they can know to limit you to one person, to 1 vote per person, is to force you to sign in. Technically, you could do multiple if you're willing to go create a whole bunch of emails to constantly sign in with. Then you could get multiple votes in, but that's a lot more time to be put into it, and not as easily scammable. And I don't know anybody that's going to do that thousands of times, creating thousands of emails out there. But that's the best way we can do it. Is it's literally a little check, or a toggle, I should say, on Google Forms to say limit to 1 response. And then in parentheses, it says voters will be forced to sign into their Google account.
So that is a pain. I acknowledge that. I wanted it to be as easy as possible for people to vote. Maybe next year we'll have to rework how we do the tournament to prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. But that will be the change that we make going forward to round 3, which will start tomorrow. Thank you to everybody that voted. Really appreciate it. We do want to keep it going. Remember, the winning person will get a $200 donation to the charity of their choice. So there is reason to actually vote for someone. So something good ultimately will come out of this. I'm just amazed that we got to cheating in the 49ers Media Madness tournament, or at the very least, someone trying to rig the results.
I didn't cheat because I lost round 1.
Yeah, that's the least surprising thing ever.
Yeah. You gave me a tough matchup round 1, you jerk.
Jordan Elliott is not an easy matchup. I agree.
He's been in the final 8 every time.
I didn't give you.
I know.
All right. Okay. 2 more things we want to get to. First, let's get to the tweet from David Lombardi that absolutely.
Well, before we get to that, I do actually have something controversial that happened to me.
Oh, all right.
I was included in a supposedly private chat by the 49ers of their free agency targets. And I was in there and I was able to look at them all. And that was about a month ago, but there have been no posts.
You're really going there?
Yeah, I am.
You're really that was such a.
You get it? You get it? There's been no posts because they didn't target anybody in free agency.
Man, that was a long walk for a short trip, man. Woo! All right. Let's get to the post from David Lombardi. And the post comes as a result of news that the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the CFL want to talk to Trey Lance. They want to possibly negotiate with him to see if he'll join up. Obviously, Lance hasn't signed anywhere in free agency, and it's possible that maybe he winds up in the CFL, which I think would be a good move for him.
I think anything that gets him a starting opportunity would be the best move for him, and that's not happening in the NFL. At this point, him going and being a backup and let's say try to be the Geno Smith, be the next Geno Smith that goes and becomes a backup for a while, rehabs his image, and then gets a chance to start, isn't going to work out for him because he doesn't have the starting time in for somebody to take that chance on him being the starter at this point. So I think if some team in Canadian football is willing to give him a starting spot, he needs to go there.
It is the Saskatchewan Roughriders who are adding him to his negotiation list. For what it's worth, Lance's father, Carlton, is a former Saskatchewan Roughriders cornerback. So there is sort of a family tie-in there. I think I agree with you. Go to the CFL, get the reps. It does you no good to sign on as the 4th or 3rd camp arm in the NFL, get 2 reps a day. No, that is not what you need. Go to the CFL. Trey Lance is still young. I think he's let's see, how old is Trey Lance? He's still 24 years old. Yeah. That's crazy. There's time for him. So go and do that. And hopefully, maybe he can end up with some sort of NFL career. Now, the tweet about this from David Lombardi that drives me nuts is this one, which is on the screen now. Opportune time to revisit what actually happened in Trey Lance's development. Niners knew he was very raw. 2021 plan was to work him in situationally, a 2-quarterback setup with Garoppolo. Shanahan's plan was actually fairly developed. In practice and in final preseason game, the Niners had Garoppolo and Lance alternating mid-drive efficiently. But Lance broke his finger in that game versus the Raiders. It compromised his throwing ability. 2021 developmental window gone. By the time Lance started in 2022 and broke his ankle, Brock Purdy was already on the team. Then Darnold beat him out in 2023. The ease-in reps never came for Lance. This is not true, okay? It is not what actually happened with Trey Lance, because David Lombardi conveniently leaves out the fact that even though Lance had a broken finger in 2021, Shanahan was easing him in, and it was working, by the way. It worked against the Lions in week 1. It worked against the Packers when Lance had a rushing touchdown before halftime. It was working. What actually happened, to use David's words, is that the 49ers veterans flipped out and demanded that Kyle stop putting Trey Lance in the game. That's why it stopped. And the whole 49ers beat knew it, and they didn't report it for years until after Trey Lance was traded. They didn't report it. So don't tell me what actually happened, David, because we're all here. We lived through it. And I cannot stand this constant revising of the history of what has gone on with this team over and over again, specifically from David Lombardi himself. It drives me nuts.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
Like,
it's the end of it that ruins this post, because he wasn't wrong in the beginning, and he wasn't wrong that he did break his finger. And maybe that did play a role in why Lance got sat down, but we do know for a fact that Shanahan was still easing him in with that finger until the veteran spoke up and said, stop it. Now, maybe Lance was limited, and that's ultimately why Shanahan decided, okay, fine, I'll put an end to it, because Lance could only do like very short throws. Because when Lance did go in, the times you're talking about in the regular season, it was red zone only. So maybe Lance couldn't throw more than 15 yards because of his broken finger, something like that. So maybe it wasn't a limited way. And what the veterans came and said is, don't, because this is a thing, don't take Jimmy out when he got us to the red zone and take away the touchdown opportunity from him. If you want to play Lance, play him, in other areas where if he's the one that gets us to the red zone, he can stand. That's a very possible thing that they spoke up, because he was taking him out right before they score a touchdown. But Shanahan was forced to do that because of the finger. And once those two things came together, it ended up being, okay, I'm going to stop playing Lance.
And that's fine. Like, I don't want to relitigate the whole situation. It just ticks me off to no end that a person with a huge platform like David Lombardi, who covers the team, who has a responsibility to tell people what actually occurred and inform the public, is doing the complete opposite. And he does it consistently to make the team look favorable and put them in a better light. It's irresponsible to do that. I'm sorry. It just is. And he sits here and says, here's what actually happened, as if he's the authority, when it's BS. It's pure BS. And that is what ticks me off about it, is that you are a beat writer for this team and you have a huge, huge YouTube following, 3 times bigger than anything I have going on. You have a responsibility to tell the truth. And he flat out lies. And I'm sorry, I just think it's bullshit, quite frankly.
Hey, stop the count, Rob. It's not surprising to me that he's a liar. I will say, I cursed your name because I had gone about 3 months without seeing anything David Lombardi, because I left Twitter, and now I was forced to see it again. And that's why I had peace with not seeing his posts, because his posts are intentionally putting forth falsehoods to get reactions. Like I said, him and Grant are kind of the polar opposites. Grant paints things a little bit more negative than they really are to get a reaction and get engagement. And David Lombardi paints things a little bit more positively than the reality of it in order to get reaction and engagement. It's annoying to see, but I need to address a comment here. Nick Ellert, our YouTube member, says, Levin, you're not wrong is the equivalent to Kittle's second best skill from Rob.
There you go.
Nick, you're not wrong.
Oh man. All right. I had to get that off my chest. If you're gonna be the facts over feelings guys, then say the facts. All the facts. Don't leave out the ones that go against your argument or make the 49ers look bad. Okay. That is just something that I needed to get off my chest. All right. Before we wrap up, there's one more thing I want to talk about. And it's just something I had a little fun with, Levin, when I was thinking about the draft and what I am hoping for rookies in the draft. And it comes with a little visual aid that admittedly works better on the YouTube channel, but I'll try to describe it for all the podcast listeners out there. In my head, your rookies, you want them to fall into different buckets, right? Ideally, they fall into all 3 buckets, but they don't always. And I have broken it down with a convenient little Venn diagram, which you now see on the screen. There's 3 primary characteristics that I think you want all your rookies to have. You want them to be hardworking, you want them to be talented, and you want them to be healthy. Would you agree with those 3 things?
Yes. I guess I would have one that's also smart, but you can include that in talent, I guess.
So those are the 3 categories that I have. Now, obviously it's a Venn diagram, so things overlap, right? If you are hardworking and talented, but you can't stay healthy, you fall into the hard luck category. That is Elijah Mitchell, right? Really talented player, hardworking guy. His body will not let him play football anymore. There are some guys, Jalen Hurd had a lot of physical talent, appeared to be a hard worker, could not stay on the field. That is one of the unfortunate things that can happen to draft picks.
Yeah, I would agree with calling that hard luck. That is the Jalen Hurd region of this bracket.
Yeah. If you are hardworking and you are healthy, but you don't have a ton of talent, you're a depth piece. You fall into the depth category.
Yeah, the Trent Taylor area of this Venn diagram.
Even Colton McKivitz. And Colton McKivitz is a hardworking player. He's generally on the field for this team more often than not. He's not super talented. I don't think he should be a starting tackle, but he clearly should be in the league. He should be. If Colton McKivitz is your swing tackle, your offensive line is okay.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it, that you want your depth pieces to be guys that are going to work hard in practice despite not getting starting reps, and guys that can stay on the damn field.
Think of Jordan Willis, hardworking, generally healthy when he was with the 49ers, solid depth piece, blocked a punt in a playoff game that led to a touchdown. Just throwing that out there too. Now, if you are talented and healthy, but not hardworking, the category I put you into is one contract. You're a one contract guy. Deebo Samuel, perfect example. Ultra talented, generally healthy, but didn't work as hard as he needed to be in top form. They never should have signed him to a second contract. That is your one contract guy. And by the way, the people that fall into the hard luck or the depth of the one contract categories doesn't mean they can't be solid contributors for the 49ers. It just means that there are things that are not, ideal about them as players.
I would say that you definitely need some one contract guys, and you definitely need some of the depth guys. The hard luck is, you don't really want that.
Right.
Because basically if you weren't in the hard luck category and you were talented and hardworking, you would be a star level player.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, you need some one contract guys. You can't sign everybody. And the ones you don't want to sign are the ones that have questionable work ethic. We know damn well, because Deebo has said it himself, he is overweight often, all the time. He literally said last year he played overweight.
And it doesn't mean that you can't be a contributor. Clearly, Deebo is a massive contributor to this team. Even the hard luck guys, Elijah Mitchell was a great contributor. Unfortunately, it just didn't last. Just because you're not in one of the ideal categories doesn't mean you can't have a significant role for the 49ers. It's just not the ideal thing, obviously. And then the last remaining spot, of course, if you are hardworking and you are healthy and you are talented, those are your franchise guys. Those are your George Kittles. Those are your Fred Warners. Those are your guys that you build, that you sign to second contracts, that you want establishing the culture and setting the tone in your locker room.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say, as I was getting at earlier in the beginning of this, I think especially for the quarterback position, this Venn diagram needs a layer that's, you can say, natural IQ, smarts, fast processing. Basically, like, you can have quarterbacks that are talented, that are healthy, and are hardworking, and they can't succeed in the NFL because they simply cannot process fast enough in order to get through their progressions in a correct way. They're literally only missing that part of the game, but that is the most important. Like I said, you can have somebody that's talented and healthy that is a fast processor, and they'll succeed for a while in the NFL. I don't think forever, though. Eventually, people will figure out the things that they're not best at, or that they don't study film, so they can confuse them with disguises. If they're hardworking and they're healthy, but they're not crazy talented, but they're very, very smart, that's your Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy doesn't have the most talent in the world, but he's very hardworking. He's generally healthy, I guess, sort of. That's become a question mark a little bit, but he is extremely smart. He's, I would say, at the top of the charts when it comes to fast processing. Thus, you're getting a borderline franchise player, even though the talented part isn't there. I would say quarterback's a little different.
So what I'm hearing is I need to make a new Venn diagram for quarterbacks for specific positions. Is that what you're telling me? Because
I would say the quarterback is the one that is different. I think all of the positions would probably fall pretty well into this Venn diagram.
all right, I'm going to do it. I will break it down then. I will do a quarterback Venn diagram. I got the time. We're heading into the offseason, baby. I got the time. I'm going to do it just for you. I'm going to save it for Wednesdays just for you.
Well, speaking of got the time, are you wanting to do my idea? Or are you saying, screw your idea, we're not going to cover it?
It is pretty late in the show, and we will have other shows to do that. There was one other thing I wanted to get your take on, because it looks like the NFL is going to move touchbacks on kickoffs to the 35-yard line, which means if you have a kicker with a strong leg who can actually make a kick, you're not going to have to move the ball very far down the field to get in field goal range, Levin. If they're having kickoff returns go to the 35-yard line, I think scoring is going to go up. I know that they're trying to get more people to return kicks. I still think coaches are risk averse and they would rather say, screw it, we don't want to risk a return, just kick it in the end zone. I'm shocked that they're going to make this move.
So I thought this was they were moving where they kick off from back, but not the touchbacks. But I hadn't read the rule because I was waiting until it became an official rule, because I'm not somebody that cares to read something that's not going to come to fruition.
It's not official yet. They got to vote on it at the owners' meeting.
So are you saying they're going to kick from the 35, or that a touchback goes to the 35?
A touchback would go to the 35.
Why? They already said they want more returns. That not having returns has made the game boring, and fans have complained. If it goes to the 35, everybody's going to take the touchback.
Well, they think that teams are going to kick it shorter. They're not going to kick it in the end zone.
Because that is true.
That's the thinking, is that they'll be so worried about a touchback going to the 35 that they'll kick it shorter. I don't think it's going to work. One, I don't know that all the kickers are good enough. And two, I just think that coaches are risk averse. Like especially if a team has a decent returner, they're just going to be like, screw it. At least if they'll start at the 35-yard line, but there's no chance that they're going to get a kick return touchdown if we kick it into the end zone.
Just say you have to return it. No such thing as a touchback. I would be in favor of that rule. Give me the kicker, because that makes the kicking
that's true.
Crazy important, right? Because if you have a kicker that can accurately, say that if they can kick it completely out of the end zone where it doesn't bounce anywhere on the field, that's a penalty and they get it at the 35. If it lands anywhere in the field of play, including the end zone, it must be returned, or you only get to the 10-yard line, right? So then everybody's going to want to return, and you get kickers. If a kicker can accurately kick it to the corner of an end zone to where it's going to bounce inbounds in that end zone, that's a massive weapon. Just make it to where if it's a catchable ball, you must return it, or you only get to the 10-yard line.
That seems like it would be a super easy fix. Not going to lie. Like you convinced me. I'm on board. Just eliminate the touchback as an option.
Yeah. Make the touchback so much further back, because there is a technical touchback. If the kicker kicks it all the way out of the end zone where it was not catchable, you get a touchback and you get to go all the way to the 35, so that it's not just, we're going to sign a guy that can kick it completely out of the back of the end zone every single time, and they always get it at the 10-yard line, because then that becomes a problem.
This comment from M. Patel is accurate. He says, if you kick it out of bounds, the other team gets the ball at the 40, but if it's a touchback, they get it at the 35. That's a good point.
You try to kick it into the very corner just before the end zone every time, and guess what? If he misses it slightly and it goes out of bounds, oh well.
Anyway,
but to your point about field goals, is if they get it at the 35, in modern NFL, they basically need 35 yards to be in field goal range. Because if you get to the 40, that's a 57-yard field goal. I would say probably 25 teams out of 32 in today's NFL are going to attempt that field goal.
That's basically one explosive play, pretty much. I mean, obviously not exactly, but it changes things significantly. Sunday are the league meetings in Florida. It is conveniently before Brandon Aiyuk's April 1st deadline for his option. I have a feeling John Lynch is going to be hard at work trying to find a trade for Brandon Aiyuk at those meetings when everybody's there and face-to-face. And yeah, frankly, a little drunk. I'm just going to lay it out there for people. That's a thing that happens, especially at the owners' meetings, because I've been to those meetings before. For years, I went to those meetings. They are a little drunk. Trust me, I've seen it with my own eyes. I saw Jerry Jones particularly hammered quite early in the morning when I was checking into the hotel one year.
Here's the. I don't think there's a winnable situation with the Brandon Aiyuk getting traded for the 49ers. Because if they trade him, it is guaranteed they're not getting as much as they would have last year.
Oh, yeah.
And you got nothing out of him this past season. So it's not like you benefited from having him 1 year. So you can make the argument. And well, hey, we had a 1,000-yard receiver for 1 year. That was worth the downgrade in the draft pick that we got. Whatever. No, he got injured. So you're going to trade him now when his stock is literally the lowest it has ever been in the NFL? Just doesn't make sense to me.
It only makes sense in that it saves Jed York money. That's the only thing. It doesn't make football sense at all. It doesn't make a lick of football sense. But the other thing that's going to happen Sunday 11 is we're going to hear from Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. They're going to be interviewed at these league meetings. We have not heard from Kyle since he was publicly neutered in that article by Mike Silver, where they told the world that the Niners were blaming Kyle's emotional, decision-making process for all these extensions that they're unhappy with that they gave to players. That I want that to be the first question to him so bad. Not what about the draft, not any of that. Not even about Brock Purdy's contract, even if it happens. The first question I want to ask Kyle Shanahan is, Kyle, how do you feel? What's your reaction to this article that came out that essentially blamed you for all the contracts that the 49ers don't like?
You know what my first question to John Lynch would be?
What?
You're aware that the new league year started in March, not April, correct?
Yeah, but I think that should be Kyle, what's your reaction to this? They blamed him in that article. And again, just like we were talking about with the Aiyuk stuff, nobody from the 49ers refuted anything in that article. There was nothing about anything. And all their actions have backed up everything that's in that article. So, Kyle, what's your reaction?
I would ask John Lynch that question first, because Lynch is the one that doesn't have a very good poker face, right? Ask John Lynch, hey, there's this report out there that all of the bad contracts were done because Kyle Shanahan demanded it. You are the person that is seen as the front office head. What do you think the truth is? And see his reaction. Because if he hesitates, that's probably something that came from Jed York, and it is true that Kyle Shanahan got neutered.
Vinny V asks, Rob, is there media coverage at the owners' meetings? Yes, I just said I was there. I used to cover the owners' meetings for Pro Football Talk when I worked for NBC. There absolutely is media there. Kyle Kami and Barrows will probably be there. I imagine David Lombardi will be there too. There absolutely is media coverage. Now, the media doesn't get access to everything because it is a league meeting. Like the owners meet and there's no media in that room. Media finds out about it from their sources, but you don't get access to go everywhere at these league meetings. But yeah, you're there. I've gone there. I've gone to they have a sweet media party one of the nights too, where there's, open bar and food, and it's awesome. So yeah, there's absolutely media there. So we will hear about it. Nick Ellard says Kyle Kami won't be there. He's on vacation. That's true. He did mention that in the podcast. So Barrows will be there. Lombardi will be there. I'm sure Matt Mayoko is going to be there as well. Trust me, Jennifer Lee Chan, there will be media at the meetings.
It's kind of like the combine for teams.
Yeah,
in the setup that the media is there, but really it's just nonstop interviews for the media is what it is. It's they don't necessarily get to see everything. Like you get to see the measurements and the drills of the NFL combine from the media perspective, but you're not seeing behind the doors of the interviews that the players are going through or the testing results for, stuff like the Wonderlic and things like that. But why the media shows up to the NFL combine is because they get nonstop interviews. That's why the media goes to the NFL combine.
Hyman on Twitch says, is Parag there? He should have to answer. I don't know.
He will not. I would bet he will not, because it's an extremely busy time for Leeds United right now. And he is their main guy for Leeds United.
Does Parag ever give interviews ever, unless it's a puff piece about him? I don't think the man ever speaks. I'm seeing this, by the way. Somebody in the chat was talking about this, and Jane Slater just tweeted about it. Apparently, there's a rumor. Somebody in Cleveland was saying that the Browns are working on trading for Dak Prescott. Jane Slater, who covers the NFL for the NFL Network and also does some work on 105.3 The Fan in Texas, says that it's fake news. 2 separate sources have said it's fake news and it's absolutely not happening, as she has tried to run it down. So she's throwing cold water. She actually tweeted a GIF of somebody literally throwing a bucket of cold water on this rumor.
The reaction to that rumor is no shit, it's fake news. They can't afford him. The guy that demands getting the most money all the time, Dak Prescott, they can't afford him. They do not have the money to afford that. They just signed Myles Garrett to a crazy record contract, and they're still paying Deshaun Watson. They cannot afford a $60 million a year quarterback.
I agree. I agree with everything you're saying. People brought it up in the chat, so I wanted to mention it. By the way, speaking of rumors, Jason Aponte said yesterday that he had heard that the Niners' potential deal with the Browns for Aiyuk would also include Wyatt, the guard there. Was it Wyatt Teller in Cleveland? I could get on board with that.
Depends on the draft compensation, honestly. The truth is, like, I'm probably the biggest fan amongst all of us for Brandon Aiyuk, but the simple fact is you don't know what you're getting, and he is expensive. So if you have a good enough offer out there, I'm not opposed to going ahead and going down that route as long as it's being utilized to be better.
Right.
Like if it's just shutting Brandon Aiyuk's contract, I'm not in favor of it. But if you're getting a starting caliber player in return and say like a second round pick or something like that, I would be okay with that as much as I like Brandon Aiyuk.
I do like Brandon Aiyuk, but the injury risk there is real.
Right.
That knee injury is a devastating thing, and hopefully he comes back, but you just don't know. There's no, and that sucks, unfortunately, because I think he could have been really, really good. And I think with Debo gone, he was going to be set up to really elevate his game, and hopefully he still can, but you just don't know, unfortunately. And, you know, when you're trying to run a team and put a roster together, you're trying to mitigate as much risk as possible. We'll see what ultimately ends up happening. But I did want to mention that Dak thing because people are trying to connect dots. Well, if the Cowboys trade Dak to Cleveland, could the Cowboys then come to the 49ers and want Brock Purdy in a trade if he can't get a contract worked out? I don't know that that's going to happen. Who knows? Maybe it will. Nothing would surprise me with the 49ers at this moment, but the first domino in that is supposedly not happening, according to...
What if the Steelers suddenly want to trade for Brock Purdy and Brandon Aiyuk?
And well, they don't want Aiyuk now. They got DK.
I know, but that's the team that's out there going, we don't have a quarterback. Now Aaron Rodgers has played it perfectly. He waited it out, and now it's okay. Like if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I call the Steelers and say, "Well, you give me $10 million more than what you were offering, I'll sign today. If not, good luck."
Aaron Rodgers. I don't know why any team. Pittsburgh, just draft a guy. Like, just draft a guy. Stop trying to import like Russell Wilson.
They drafted Kenny Pickett, and it didn't work.
Yeah, keep going. Try again.
I'm in favor of, until you have a true franchise guy, draft a quarterback every year.
Bill Walsh said draft a quarterback every year. I'm completely on board with that. Anyway, that's the rundown of topics for today. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody that voted in the 49ers Media Madness Tournament. Again, we'll keep it going. Round 3 is going to start up tomorrow. We really appreciate all the support. Like and subscribe to the channel if you would, please. Give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Pods. If you do, Michelle will roast me and toast you on tomorrow's program. People are really enjoying that, unfortunately for me, because her roasts are savage. But thank you, everybody. Thank you, Levin. I know you were delayed today, but I appreciate you hopping in as well.
It's like a teeny tiny roast.
You want it to be a bigger roast?
I'm just saying, like, roasting you is like, 1, it's easy. 2, like, there's not enough meat on those bones to be worthwhile.
Okay, great. Now we're shaming me. Oh, that's awesome. What a festival today has been. Enjoy your Wednesday, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.